Underlying beliefs. What are they and why do they matter? Let's talk about it on The Good Life. Welcome, friends, to another episode of The Good Life with Professor G. I'm Professor G, and this is The Good Life, like the sign says. Today we're going to tackle a concept that I find is very important, understanding why it is that people behave the way that they behave. This concept is known as underlying beliefs. Now, we all have beliefs about a bunch of different things, right? We have beliefs about money, society, family, politics, religion, a whole lot of beliefs about a whole lot of stuff. But what is a belief? Think about it. A belief turns out to be a concept that we deem to be true. We hold on to it because we believe in its veracity. So, do they matter in our everyday lives? I think they absolutely do, because we've known for a very long time that our beliefs lead to our behaviors. And sometimes we wonder why it is that we do what we do, but it's because we've never investigated what our beliefs are. So let's talk about this concept of underlying beliefs. So why are they underlying? Well, because some beliefs are very obvious, but then there's other beliefs that are not as obvious. They are underlying. Underlying what? Our everyday conscious mind. So Sigmund Freud gave this example of an iceberg, where the tip of the iceberg that you can see, which is actually a tiny part of the iceberg, was the conscious mind. Then underneath that conscious tip of the iceberg is the pre-conscious mind. And then way down below, in the darkness of the waters, is the unconscious mind. So, being that these underlying beliefs are in what's called the pre-conscious mind, with some investigating, you can see them, but they might not be as clear as the ones in the conscious mind. I'll give you an example. So, my family came from Cuba in the late 50s. And my grandmother came from the island with some beliefs that they held as a society that she then passed on to my parents and to myself. A very interesting one. They believed that if you ate, and maybe ate too much, and got into a pool or into a river or into a lake, that you could have an embolism. Now, I've searched high and low for the research that supports this belief about eating and having an embolism when you get into a body of water. And thus far, I have not been able to find a single shred of evidence that says that this belief is true. So, where did it come from? Well, I think that it came from perhaps at some point during a picnic or a family gathering. Uncle Joe ate too much, got into the river, had an embolism and died. And everybody who was present said, "Oh my God, if you eat and get into a pool or into a lake or a river, you're going to have an embolism." But that's like saying that if you cross Main Street on a Tuesday wearing a yellow shirt and some poor guy got hit by a car doing that, that everyone who passes Main Street with a yellow shirt is going to get hit by a car, especially on a Tuesday. So sometimes these factors come together and become a belief and become something that we pass down to our children and our children's children without a shred of evidence that this thing might be true. So here I am at a pool party as a child, playing in the pool. The pizza shows up. I have 2 or 3 slices, and I refuse to get back in. And my friends are like, well, why don't you get back in? Oh, I just ate, and I don't want to have an embolism. And I assure you that when I was 8 years old, I didn't even know what that was. But I knew that it was bad, and I knew that I shouldn't get in. So beliefs lead to behaviors. Okay? Beliefs lead to behaviors. And we have to be careful with the beliefs that we hold because we will behave accordingly. So I think it's important to understand the sources of many of our beliefs in our belief system. So one of the main sources, of course, mom and dad. You know, we're born into a family. You know, our parents are our first teachers of beliefs. Even when they aren't purposely doing it, they are teaching us something. Like, for example, I like to think of children as like a cell phone, that they show up with some basic apps, you know, like how to breathe, you know, some of the early, you know, responses that children have to stimulus and things like this, like closing their eyes when a light is shown on them or something like this. But then the parents come along and then they install certain apps onto the child. One of the apps that gets downloaded, unfortunately, is the lying app. So let's say there's a small child in the back seat of a car. You guys are going to the beach, you know, or you're going to the park, or you're going to, you know, some fun place, and dad gets a phone call. And nowadays with Bluetooth, right, the entire car hears the phone call. And it's dad's friend. And dad's friend needs help with something. Maybe he needs to move or carry some appliance. And dad says, oh, man, I'm so sorry. I wish I could help you. It's just that, you know, I've been called into work today. You know, I'm on my way there now. And the child is watching this from the back seat. Guess what? Dad just downloaded the lying app onto the child, right? So a couple weeks go by, kid doesn't do his homework, dad confronts him, and the kid uses the lying app and says, oh, I don't know, I forgot, or, you know, the proverbial dog ate my homework, and the dad gets very upset, and the child is confused. Why? Because dad downloaded the lying app onto the kid, and now the kid wants to use it, and dad gets upset. There's a conflict there. So there are many beliefs that we get from mom and dad. They're not all bad. There's a lot of good ones too, you know, like holding the door for someone to come on in. Mom and dad don't need to teach that to a child. They just do it. The child watches and learns that behavior. So there's good ones too. But then there's negative ones like the lying app. So mom and dad are a source of these underlying beliefs. Our early teachers in school, right, can be a source of underlying beliefs. Our religious traditions teach us a lot of these underlying beliefs. Our culture teaches us a lot of underlying beliefs. Our own experiences teach us underlying beliefs. The media teaches us underlying beliefs. Advertisers definitely know that if they can get you to believe something, you are more likely to buy their product. Such is the case of these companies that sell products to color your beard or your hair for men. You know, they show you a commercial with a guy with some gray hair at a party, getting no attention from women at all. And then he goes and buys this product and colors his beard and goes back to a party that following weekend. Then all of a sudden, he's the life of the party. right? So they want you to believe that this will happen and get you to go and spend your dollars on their product. So advertisers are big on this underlying belief thing. Now, there's a recent phenomenon with social media, especially in the last 15 years or so, where a lot of beliefs are shared on these different platforms. And I recall talking about underlying beliefs during a class that I taught a few years ago. And this young lady came up to me with her cell phone and said, "Professor G, is this an example of an underlying belief?" And I said, "Well, what is it?" And she showed me a meme that had a girl in the bathroom holding a cell phone and a guy standing on the other side of the bathroom door, very upset. And on the bottom it said, "If you take your boyfriend's cell phone and lock yourself in the bathroom and he goes nuts, he's cheating." And I said, exactly right. That is an underlying belief. Not exactly right that I believe that what that thing is saying is true, but that is an underlying belief that could make its way into your psyche, and then you will behave accordingly because we behave according to our beliefs. So I can imagine a bunch of young girls across the country looking at this meme and thinking, when is the moment that I'm going to grab his cell phone and run and lock myself into the bathroom? Sadly, I believe that happened a lot. And sadly, I feel that it led to a lot of negative outcomes because that doesn't really say anything about the boyfriend's behavior. Maybe he just doesn't want his cell phone taken from him and sequestered in the bathroom. So social media has been a negative in that regard, right? There's a lot of pluses. I'm hopefully on social media right now as we speak. But there are also some downside to it. And this, I believe, is one of them. So there are many sources of these underlying beliefs. Now, the point is, not to go against all of the beliefs that you have, but rather to investigate them. So this Indian philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti, who wrote Freedom from the Known, this very short book. I mean, you can see how thin that is. Very short book. He challenges people to challenge all of their beliefs, every single one from A to Z, to drop every single belief that you have about every single thing, about yourself, about others, about the world, and then do an analysis of yourself, of the world, of others, and come to your own conclusions. And you will find that some of those beliefs will stay unchanged. Other beliefs will be modified to fit your own experience. And other beliefs will just be dropped completely altogether because they don't fit your own experience. Just like my grandmother's teachings on eating and dying of an embolism if you get into a pool. That one's gone for good. That one's gone for good. So I think it's very good advice. I also think that we can be fair about the way that we approach things. If we have a belief about something and we only go to the sources that are going to confirm that belief, that means that we are falling into what's called a confirmation bias, where if I believe that people from Quasiland are bad people, then every report of a citizen from Quasiland doing something wrong, I'm going to gravitate towards and use it as evidence. And every time that someone from Quasiland does something good, I'm going to say, that's the exception to the rule. Why? Because I believe that people from Quasiland are bad people, right? So we get all the isms from this, right? We get racism, sexism, ageism, right? And those things are usually very narrow-minded, very narrow-minded. So that's why it's important to have your own experience and adopt your own beliefs about life and not just receive them from the media, from your culture, from your parents. Have your own set of beliefs based on your own experience, because those beliefs will influence your behaviors. It reminds me of a guy that I worked with in domestic violence a few years ago. He told me that all women were cheaters. And I said, please explain. And he said, well, I've dated 4 women, and all 4 of them have been cheaters. And then I asked him, was your mom a cheater? He didn't like that because, mom is sacred. But I think he got the point when he said, no, my mom's not a cheater. I said, well, she's a woman, right? You said all women were cheaters. And I got him to understand that maybe he was attracting a certain type of woman, and that was the thing that they had in common, not that they were women. When it comes to ageism, there's a concept that, well, I'm a certain age, I can't do anymore, the things that I wanted to do when I was younger. And a very wise man once said, how would you live your life if you didn't know your age? How would you live your life if you didn't know your age? Would you take more chances, perhaps? Would you seek other opportunities? Or is that something for the 20-somethings only? What if you didn't know what your age was? How would you live your life? So this issue of underlying beliefs, and I like that it's called underlying, because sometimes underlying beliefs are lying to you. If today's video brought something good to your life, please like and subscribe, and share it with your family and friends. In addition, if you'd like individual counseling, I'm available in the state of Florida and in the state of Colorado, and my contact information is in the description below. Till next time, go ahead and have yourself a good life.